Welcome to the third edition of Fourth and Goal, the one and only podcast for all things fantasy football. I'm Keegan Kerr, sitting alongside fantasy experts Ryan Gilbo, Alex Badger, and Adam Dapplet.
What's up?
All right, do you want to jump right into it from our takes from last week?
Let's get going.
Yes. My question is, why is Aaron Jones so good at football? I remember, for multiple years in the past, he's always been, solid. Nothing crazy, just, solid. And now, I think in the last, either 3 or 4 weeks, whatever that Cowboys game was, he's dropped 2 games over 40 points in PPR. And I also, I didn't really know much about him, but going into the season, I always thought that Aaron Jones was more of just, a ground and pound guy, not really, a receiving back. But he's had multiple receiving touchdowns, and they've all been, not 2-yard screen, then he runs for the touchdown. They've been, 30-yard wheel routes where he makes wide receiver catches that are really impressive. So he's been having a great year and obviously a great week last week.
He had 159 receiving yards last week. Mm-hmm. All right, for those of you keeping track at home, that's more yards than Tyler Lockett, Cortland Sutton, and so many other ridiculously good wide receivers where he's just out receiving them. All right, and he's just doing stuff like that, and he put up 41.6 in fantasy with only 67 rushing yards.
Crazy.
So if he can add that kind of pass game dimension to his game, he's going to be unbelievable.
One thing I do wonder is once Davante Adams is back from the whole turf toe thing, are his numbers going to go down with Davante Adams back? Especially with 159 receiving yards. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, we all know how good he is, but he can only throw so many yards a game. Some of those yards probably will be going to Davante Adams.
Yeah.
I think another surprise this year is a 33-year-old Julian Edelman.
Yeah.
Putting in big numbers these past few weeks. What is he? He's the 8th ranked wide receiver in the league. And Edelman's always been a solid PPR guy. He'll get maybe 70 yards on 7 catches. Not great in standard, but he's proven to be getting a lot more red zone targets in these past few weeks. I think Brady, with all the turnover at the wide receiver position, is just focusing on Edelman and James White, just the guys that he knows. And
Well, I think that's huge. I think with Edelman, you look around and you get a bunch of pedestrians playing wide receiver for the Patriots in addition to Julian Edelman. So if Julian Edelman gets all of those consistent targets and Tom Brady has consistent faith in him, that's amazing. And last week he had 8 catches, week before that he had 7, and week before that he had 9. Right? So if he just keeps getting this massive workload, he's going to be doing great.
Maybe it has to do with Gronk retiring because he's out of the picture now. So he's definitely...
and there's still uncertainty at the tight end position.
Yeah, so he's 100% the top target now. Another guy I definitely want to talk about, Cooper Kupp over in London.
Speaking of top targets.
Had a great day. He is now the second best wide receiver in PPR. He had the last couple weeks he was a little slow, had 5.7 and 11, so I was thinking to myself maybe he's starting to slow down, but then he comes out this week in London with 7 catches for 220 yards and a touchdown. Obviously, that's a great week, his best week of the year in terms of fantasy points. That was reassuring for Cooper Kupp owners to see because they were so fixed on him being a star, then he had those slow weeks, and now he's back.
Yeah, really good to see that out of him, especially with that dip in production, that real confidence booster against Cincinnati. Obviously, Cincinnati isn't a top-tier team, not even mediocre this year.
To say the least.
Yeah.
But really trying to get that confidence back up, fantasy owners look to him.
And also great for Jared Goff owners. Jared Goff has been playing pretty well. And I don't know how many people are owning Jared Goff, but that Rams offense is starting to look relatively potent. And I know it's Cincinnati, and I know you can only take so much from that. But overall, I think that Rams offense is starting to look good.
Yeah, definitely. Latavius Murray stepping in for Alvin Kamara. Huge week, yeah, I think Thursday.
Back to back.
Yeah, because last week he also had a good week, and then this week he had a great week.
He's proving to be a must start.
Yeah, until Kamara
comes back.
Even when Kamara comes back,
I would still flex him.
If you're in a bigger league, you could definitely probably get away with still flexing him when Kamara's back, I think.
So here's my fear with Latavius Murray. In the past 2 weeks, he's had 27 carries and 21 carries.
Right.
If Alvin Kamara comes back, when Alvin Kamara was playing, he never had more than 8 carries. So it's not a question of talent as much with Latavius Murray, as much as just saying, how many touches is he really going to get when Alvin Kamara is on the field?
Well, going back to, I think it was even just last year when it was like Mark Ingram. There was like a point in the year where like Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, two running backs on the same team, were both top 5 fantasy running backs. I think someone in our league had both. That was you?
That was me. That was me. They carried me all the way to the finals.
I mean, that's something that I never thought I would ever see. 2 running backs on the same team being like top 5, at least for at one point in the season. So that's something that the Saints could definitely pull off. So I wouldn't, if you're a Latavius Murray owner, I wouldn't exactly be like quick to immediately bench him when Alvin Kamara comes back.
It'll be interesting to see how the workload shifts and whether or not Latavius Murray gets more, seeing as he's played so amazingly these past couple weeks. And really, that's just going to be something to see after the Saints take their bye in Week 9.
Yeah, speaking of workloads, David Johnson, he's been fighting a little bit of injury, but obviously Chase Edmonds stepped up and had a great week a couple weeks ago. And then yesterday, at the trade deadline, Kenyon Drake is shipped over to Arizona. So now you got Chase Edmonds, who's been proving himself as a good running back. Kenyon Drake, who hasn't really this year, but he's proved himself as good in the past.
He's a good pass catcher. He takes some targets away.
And then there's also David Johnson. So a lot of threats there in the backfield for the Cardinals. And I think it's definitely concerning for David Johnson owners, because if you're a David Johnson owner, you definitely drafted him top 10, probably top 5,
Like
6.
right after Zeke, or
Yeah.
some people took him before Zeke.
Definitely
So-
like top 6 probably.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if someone who's definitely going to be your first round pick, you don't want there to be so many threats in that backfield. You want it to be just David Johnson, and I think that's definitely a little concerning, especially with the injury he's battling.
Talking about like workload issues, I think Zach Ertz is, he's not having the year that fantasy owners or probably Zach Ertz expected coming in, and I think that's due to the targets being taken away from him. Carson Edwards targets tight ends more than any.
Carson Wentz.
What did I say?
Carson
Carson
Edwards is the
Edwards.
point guard for the
Carson.
Boston
Okay.
Celtics.
Carson,
The backup quarterback and backup
Alright.
point guard.
Carson Wentz targets tight ends like at a 30-something% clip, but those targets aren't always going to Zach Ertz. They're going to
Dallas Goddard has
Yeah.
had a huge rise over there in Philadelphia. They really love him. They're super high on him. And honestly, Zach Ertz has looked a little banged up. He's been marked as healthy and he's been playing, but he's looked a little slow and his routes, he's not getting a ton of separation.
He's not getting open, yeah.
So-
and I'm looking at the fantasy app right now, and Matthew Berry's entertaining the question of benching him, which just a couple of years ago would have been crazy. But that's where we're at.
I have this theory that every single tight end is playing through at least something small because of how banged up they are every single. Like, I just can't physically picture like a tight end, like a starting tight end playing X amount of snaps, whatever starting tight ends play, like the majority of the snaps, and then just like the next day being like, I am ready to go to practice, coach. I am feeling a-okay. Like they have to block, they have to run routes, they're doing everything on that field, and I mean I think it's probably the most grueling position to play, and I think. Zach Ertz is showing that. But I mean, I feel like that's been Gronk for the last 5 years that he was playing. He was always playing through something, and he had like the robot arm thing going on. Like
Yeah.
tight ends are always going through stuff that a lot of times just doesn't go on paper. So I think Zach Ertz, I wouldn't be surprised to hear like after, because I remember like Martellus Bennett when he was on the Patriots, it came out that he was playing with like a chipped bone in his foot, was it?
Yeah,
Or something?
so there are a lot of crazy injuries out of that position.
I could
So-
definitely see it's like towards like the end of the season, it's like, oh, it just came out that Zach Ertz was playing with like a partially torn whatever the whole
Yeah.
time, like something like that. You know what I mean? Because I don't think Zach Ertz is just gonna go from star to bust in 1 year. I just don't see it.
Well, so that was our kind of big reactions from week 8. So now looking forward to week 9. What are your thoughts? Who's going to have big weeks, who's not?
Well, one matchup I really like, it's Monday Night Football, I believe. Giants Cowboys. I think Zeke and Saquon are both gonna have big weeks.
Yeah.
Division rivals, so, well, not really much in recent years because the Giants have been pretty bad and the Cowboys have been good, but theoretically, it's like how the Patriots and the Jets are, unquote, a rivalry.
Yeah.
Sort of like that,
Same
but
kind of
I think they'll both be playing with intensity, and I think those are obviously like the big name players on those two teams, so I could see both Zeke and Saquon in the same game having big weeks.
For sure.
Especially for Zeke's coming off a bye, so he's well rested, and Saquon's coming off like a 28-point week, his highest of the year. So, yeah.
For me, the big one I'm looking at is I see Josh Jacobs for the Oakland Raiders. Absolute horse. Like, this
Yeah.
guy just gets so many carries, just churns those legs for so long. And he's playing the Detroit defense, which has been exceptionally porous. He had a tough week last week, But overall, if you look at Josh Jacobs' production, he's just getting a ton of carries and a ton of yards, even if he doesn't get touchdowns. In a game I expect the Raiders to win pretty handedly, I think this could be a huge day for Josh Jacobs, especially if he starts milking the clock around the third quarter.
I would say that I like Juju Smith-Schuster going forward because now that Mason Rudolph is back, it looks like he's getting a bit more targets. He found the end zone for the first time in a few weeks.
Yep.
I never thought we would say the sentence, now that Mason Rudolph is back, Juju Smith-Schuster's season is saved. But it's true.
It's
true. It's valid.
And he's still that was 1 week, put up 5 catches for 103 yards and a touchdown. It'll be interesting to see if he can do it again, but I think he has upped his value and restored some faith in some fantasy owners, which is good.
Definitely. Another player I like, basically from here on forward, is Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
Obviously, there was some speculation yesterday whether he was going to get traded at the trade deadline or not. Obviously, he didn't. But here's his schedule for the rest of the season, because the bye week has already happened. At Miami, Giants at home, at Redskins, Raiders at home, at the Bengals, Miami at home, then at the Ravens, Pittsburgh at home, at Buffalo. There are so many easy matchups in there. He's got the Dolphins twice, the Bengals, the Redskins, the Raiders, the Giants. I mean, that's like a fantasy. If you have Le'Veon Bell, your mouth is watering looking at your future.
So Le'Veon Bell is basically looking at his schedule, and it's taking him to the Westboro High School athletics page, and he's playing the JV football schedule for the rest of the season, right? He's playing a bunch of guys who have no business being on the same field as him, and he needs to come out and actually play well. These past 3 weeks have been abysmal for him. I kind of forgot he was actually still in the NFL. So he needs to step up for fantasy owners and work hard this week, and maybe he can get a chance to get back.
Let's move on to some.
I just wanted to say that with Bell, you've got these easy teams coming up. He's been underperforming. Miami, you just look at another bye week. Honestly, if you have Miami on your schedule, it's the easiest thing you've ever seen. But Bell needs to get back at that elite level he was playing at with the Steelers in order for anything to really happen, for me at least, with him. Otherwise, he's another mid-tier running back because he has not been performing at the level that he has been in the past.
So let's shift into some busts now, right? Because obviously there are going to be a couple this week. I hate to sound like a broken record, but the Pats defense is kind of okay at football, and maybe people playing against the Pats should not be a start for you. Guys like Mark Ingram, Lamar Jackson, some of those threats that are usually pretty consistent for you might be tough this week.
I think Lamar Jackson's going to have an issue. The Pats' defense they're ball hawking, and they're great at getting to the quarterback and getting sacks. And I think for a young quarterback like Lamar Jackson, I think I could see him getting pretty frazzled pretty quick.
True. I don't think he's played against defense nearly this good before in his career.
So, but it will be interesting to see how the Pats' defense actually stacks up against some talent. That's been the one critique is the Pats haven't played anyone.
Yeah.
They're the 6th ranked player in all of fantasy.
That's so funny.
They're exceptionally high. And
I thought you were about to say 6th ranked defense. I'm like, well, definitely no.
No, player.
Player.
They're averaging over 20 points a game.
Yeah,
right.
That's insane.
They're averaging more than probably most of your running backs in a PPR league.
Yeah.
This is unprecedented, but also it's affecting everything because anyone the Pats play against is just done. They're locked down. And so barring some crazy change where the Pats suddenly forget how to play football, it looks like that could be a tough matchup for the rest of the season.
I do think one good thing to point out is in that Browns game, obviously not knocking the Patriots defense, but they had one scoop and score where the fumble was caused by the O-lineman's foot. So to be fair, I don't think that's going to happen again. As well as, the Baker pass, the shovel pass play, I don't even know.
Do you want to hear my theory on that pass?
Yeah.
My theory on that pass was that Baker really, really, really owed Bill Belichick a favor. It was like, here you go, take this ball, you can go score a touchdown and get your 300th win.
Speaking of Baker Mayfield, let's talk about OBJ and Jarvis Landry and Nick Chubb. So, I expect Nick Chubb to bounce back fine next week. He had a tough week against the Pats.
Nick Chubb will be fine.
He'll be fine. I'm still yet to see consistent performances added Jarvis Landry or OBJ. And, for fantasy owners that have OBJ, I feel for you. I have OBJ. Hopefully he can get back on track against Denver, but until Baker Mayfield can prove that, he can play.
He's just had a rough last 5 weeks. In the last 5 weeks, OBJ, this is PPR, 11.6, 4 then 5, and 4 then 5, then 16.1. That's a good week, and then 10 this week.
It's abysmal. It's tough,
Yeah.
and it's tough out there in Cleveland. Dog Pound is not happy.
If you drafted OBJ, I think going into the season, you would want, in that last 5 weeks, the 16 is the standout best week, and I feel like that's
That would have been the minimum of what you would have.
yeah,
expected.
average to below average of what you were expecting him to get.
Yep.
Because I think everybody was thinking OBJ was going to be actually a little bit better than he was last season because Eli Manning versus Baker, but Baker's had a really bad year, and it's showing on OBJ's numbers.
All right, any other bust predictions?
Yeah, I know we mentioned Keenan Drake earlier, but I'd just be careful playing him, especially against that San Francisco defense.
True.
They've been performing real well, but again, with that new team, just trying to get things going and really just trying to get that started against the San Francisco defense that's been performing well all year. I'd watch out for that.
Speaking of San Francisco, my Deshaun Jackson Boomer Bust Player of the Week is going to be Tevin Coleman, right? Tevin Coleman last week put up 37, and he had 4 different touchdowns.
It's crazy.
And against an Arizona defense where they could run all day, but that San Francisco defense has been playing, or that San Francisco offense is super inconsistent with who they're giving the ball to, and that's why they have no big fantasy players despite being 7-0.
That's very true. Yeah. Anything else, guys? I
Either
would
busts?
say
We got
I would say Austin Eckler's a bust, but I feel like at some point you gotta just accept that
It's not even
it's
a
not
bust
a bust anymore. If you're consistently putting up 8, it's not a bust anymore.
no. This is where we disagree because he
Oh,
put up
interesting.
he put up 25 a week ago. So you got 10 in PPR last week.
Well, let's look at Eckler's numbers.
I also wouldn't start Melvin Gordon either.
I think it's tough when you have 2 talented running backs in that backfield, unless they pull a New Orleans Saints and start splitting them very
Yeah,
evenly.
and
getting them
Melvin's
all points.
not happy. I'm sure Eckler's not happy because he's been playing so well. But
Eckler got 10.2 with a receiving touchdown
in PPR,
in PPR. So take away that one play, and he just put up 3 points.
well,
And then
He did get
week
some-
6, he had 5.8. He did have that 25 last 2 weeks ago against the Titans, but I don't know. Eckler, I think he's always been a hot topic of conversation on our show, but
he's
I
a
think
question
it's-
mark. I think he's still a question mark.
He's enigmatic.
I think he's a very dull, small question mark that you drew with a very dull pencil. So it's very faint on the. It's like a question mark, but that question mark only has a 15% chance of success and an 85% chance of failure.
Sometimes you're going to need to take that 15% of success, though, especially this week with some big bye weeks, right? New Orleans has a bye. That takes out Kamara and Thomas. Atlanta has a bye, so that's Jones, Ridley, Freeman, Matt Ryan. So do the Rams. My team, personally, I have 8 guys on bye. My entire bench is guys on bye. I'm in trouble this week. But you know what I'm doing is I'm looking to the waiver wire. And some of the guys that I'm seeing over there, Kenyon Drake gets traded. Mark Walton is going to be the Miami running back.
That's true.
Miami
However,
is bad at football.
yeah, one thing to remember is if you're the Dolphins and you're always down 40, it's tough to run the ball.
Miami is bad at football. However, I am in desperate need. Mark Walton might have a big day.
True.
So I'm looking to the waiver wire a little bit. Josh Allen might be in some of your leagues. He's playing Washington. Could have a big week with that big arm.
Josh Allen is always a quietly good fantasy quarterback because it's the Bills, when they win, it's a score of 13-9. But Kyle Allen will also just rush for 60 yards on the side, and it's a very quiet. It's always a quiet 21-point day that you never notice.
He's quietly one of the best running quarterbacks in the league.
Yes.
And you would not expect it out of the 6'5" guy with the cannon, but
Right.
that's how it works.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Any other input from our fantasy experts?
I think
Good
I'm
luck next week, guys.
Good luck in your matchups.
Definitely DM us on the Lobby O if we're missing anyone that you want to hear us talk about.
Let us know.
Let us know how you do. Yeah. We
Yeah.
want to hear if you're winning. We want to hear if this podcast helps at all. So,
Hey, thank you for listening. Have an amazing week of football, and good luck to all the squads.
Signing off.